Ahead and get started. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and share the screen for you guys here. So my name is Jabari Lottie. I am the educational department's student intern for the fall. So today I'm just going to lead you guys kind of through to the presentation today. Again, you guys have an amazing treat set in store for today. Before then, I do have a few announcements and just kind of want to introduce you guys to what is going down today for today's Lunch and Learn. So today we're doing Lunch and Learn, Right Tree, Right Place. So to begin, I just do want to let you guys know about Tree Atlanta's mission, which is to protect and improve Atlanta's urban forest by planting, conserving, and educating. Again, welcome in. This is going to be an amazing interactive virtual learning event produced by Trees Atlanta. You guys might notice that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window. If you guys have any questions during the presentation today, go ahead and click on that Q&A button or just type your questions directly into the chat and we will answer and discuss those questions live. Of course, most questions will be answered at the end, especially if they are longer ones that may require a little bit more thought. Let's keep going. So as always, we do want to offer you guys really high quality content in a format that helps you guys during this time. We do recognize that usually we would probably have these during a more in-person setup. So this is a little bit new, this virtual standout. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Please give us feedback so we can improve this virtual experience in the future. And then, of course, if you guys do like this particular event, we also have events upcoming, multiple events throughout the weeks. So check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, of course, online. If you are on the newsletter, you should get all of these events going straight to your email. And this is a really good opportunity to let you guys know that we are doing the tree sale for this fall. So if you guys do have your phones out or whatnot, this is a QR code that leads you directly to the web page. So again, maybe even during the duration of this event, go ahead, check out that tree sale. There's some really amazing flora and fauna there for you guys. So without further ado, let me please introduce Alex Beasley and take it away.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm going to hopefully get this thing going. Jabari, can you see my screen? Everybody can see it, hopefully.
Yes, you're all good.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much, Jabari. Appreciate that. Like you said, my name is Alex Beasley. I'm the associate director here, and I deal with donor relations. I am a tree freak, so I'm very excited to be teaching this class to you guys. Like he said, there's a Q&A at the end, so please, type your questions. We'll get to them. This is a very, very dense PowerPoint here, so I'm going to have to go kind of a million miles an hour on this one. So we are going to be sharing this as a PDF at the end. Michelle's going to have a follow-up email, I believe, with the survey and this particular PowerPoint. So please use it as a reference. Treesatlanta.org also has some great references: right tree, right place, what invasives look like, how to remove them, etc. So explore. So just a little bit about me. I am from Atlanta. I got my bachelor's in landscape architecture from the University of Georgia. And I've been here for a very long time. I started out in youth education department. I also did some beltline design, moved on to the neighborhoods, which is our tree planting initiatives, which we do through the neighborhoods. I went on to manage that program, and now I deal with donor relations. I'm also a certified arborist. I have been so for about 6 years. And like I said, I really, really, really like trees. And I promised my mom, who was on this call, that I'd embarrass her. That's maybe a 25-year-old picture or so of her, but grew up watching her gardening, and one day it just kind of clicked how I don't know, amazing trees are. We went out to the redwoods, and so I basically changed my at least my studies in kind of my life in general. Now I have lots and lots of trees, and I ogle over them all the time. But these are probably my three favorites here. I love to go down to Savannah and look at their beautiful alleys of live oaks. In particular, Taxodium disticum, the bald cypress, is my favorite because it's just so versatile. It's a deciduous conifer, which is very rare. Grows in the water and out of the water. And then black gum. I just feel like you can't beat that fall color. So yeah, we'll get to a lot more trees. I got to get to the soapbox portion of this. You know, while I love trees aesthetically and they make me feel good, and I hope the same for you, they're super important, more important than ever. And these are just some very scary statistics about what's going on with climate change. So I won't harp on it too much. We're all here for a reason. We all kind of know, you know, the state of the world, but those figures kind of show you really kind of how dire our tree loss is. And really, it's up to us to replant the trees. And you know, this entire webinar is meant to kind of equip you to make the right decisions. Excuse me. And the one thing that I find very staggering is 7% of our urban canopy has been lost in the last 4 years, and that was as of last year. So got to replant quickly, and the more you can get your friends to do so with the right trees, the better. Why we plant trees to save the world. I don't mean that as a hyperbole. If every person on Earth were to plant 159 trees, we'd cancel out 10 years of CO2 emissions. And you know, our governments, I don't think are necessarily going to save us on this one. So again, it's up to us. And I really truly feel that the opportunity to plant trees, while it might not be the easiest behavioral change, like some of these things that we can do using our cars less and things like that, it is, tree planting offers you an immediacy of power, but also it's a legacy. You know, you're planting a tree that is potentially going to outlast you and sequester carbon and offer shade and mitigate climate change over time. So I love trees. Trees. I've already said that. We are the city in the forest. Don't call us Hotlanta. You new Atlantans here. We're the city in the forest. We're the most forest-rich major city in America. The last statistics saying about 47.1% of our canopy overhead, excuse me, over GPS is actually urban canopy. And just wanted to plug one cool initiative that we do have going on. It's called the 1 Million Trees Initiative. It's a nonprofit and municipal partnership with 10 plus metro cities. And the initiative is obviously to plant or conserve 1 million trees. So that includes not only planting through these municipalities, but also saving forested land and ensuring that it can't get developed. So really cool. We're in the early stages of that. We're in year 2 of it. And you know, it should be very impactful, and it's just another way to kind of cheerlead trees as a solution to our current problems. Okay, so I like to get, again, that soapbox thing and all the doom and gloom stuff out of the way first. This is just really important. I mean, right tree, right place really is important in your selection process. We want you to plant as many trees as you can. If you want to buy them from the tree sale, all the better. But let's make sure we're making the right decisions. In the top left corner, I'll just go across. You have what is likely a water oak buttressing the sidewalk. I would guess that is Inman Park. That is actually one of our pictures. But you know, there's a handful of trees that have buttressing root systems that we just don't encourage you to plant in spots that are close to foundations of homes or under, you know, nearby concrete, because they'll buckle that concrete. While the tree usually does pretty well, we really don't want the trees to kind of get a bad name. There's an appropriate tree that would have gone well there, that is more fastigiate, doesn't have shallow roots, and you know, can offer equal amount of shade without, costing taxpayers a bunch of money. Drip zones are really important to keep in mind. It's really a good rule of thumb with a large tree to plant at least 20, probably 25 feet away from the structures of your homes. One thing that we're pushing in the tree sale is small trees for small yards. We don't all have expansive Chastain-esque yards. So just utilizing the opportunity for your small space without making it an issue, or as in the next picture, finding your water pipes. It's just really about doing the research. If you're going to choose a tree or multiple trees, just make sure it doesn't have roots that buttress. Make sure that they don't seek out, water pipes like maybe a weeping willow or a red maple. And bottom left is just a really, really great example of shoving something in and it not quite working. That's a Jeffrey Fuqua development. Jeff, if you're on this call, I'm sorry, but that is the Home Depot and Whole Foods over in Midtown, over by Pond City Market. They have essentially 3-foot islands in which they expected red maples to work. Not only are red maples shallow rooters, but they also have very thin bark. So they have to replace this tree every couple of years. You'll notice that at our tree sale, we do not sell Bradford pears. Throughout time, we in the arboricultural industry have made some mistakes. Certainly Bradford pear was one of those. It was bred from an Asian version of pear, and little did the arboriculturists or breeders at the time know that it would essentially escape. Nature will find a way, and it's now an invasive species. We find it all over the woods and things like that, and essentially taking over spaces where natives that actually do some good for wildlife could live otherwise. And then just another example of kind of bad design or placement is putting a low light tree in full sun. That's a beech tree that it has sun scorch, things like dogwood. I see dogwoods a lot in full sun, and just never really going to perform that well. So look at the tag, but also be willing to do your own research. I've seen at Pike Nursery and other places, wholesale nurseries, where that tag is very, very wrong. So I think your best resource is probably call us. You're always welcome to call us. We have 36 years of experience in planting in the urban environment, but Dr. Michael Durr, that's Durr with 2 R's, D-I-R-R, was a professor at University of Georgia, and he has a bunch of books that are just great resources, over 40 years of him putting things in different places. So getting strategic is super important. Again, we want to make sure that these trees are going to perform for us and for nature and not become a burden that are going to have to be cut down in 5 years, or that the neighbors complain about hiding sight lines, et cetera, et cetera. So design wise, you really have an opportunity to make things fun. I showed that I.S.A. or straight monoculture line of the live oaks at the beginning. I happen to think that's a very beautiful design. Some like crazy, multicultural, and by culture, I mean different species of trees. It really is just, you need to decide the function of these trees. Are you trying to make a design? Are you trying to make it an orchard? Are you creating a screen? Do you want to save money on your utilities? So that's absolutely the first thing that you want to determine when you're choosing a tree. Your limiting factors, your growing conditions, your mature size. I said above and below because you can generally, when the core of your canopy above head, the drip zone, that's anywhere from where your rain is going to literally drip from your tree. You have critical root zone directly under that. So that basically means if there's a tree hanging over your house, you can almost be sure that there are equidistant roots under the foundation of your home. That's not meant to scare you. They're not, that doesn't mean they're an absolute threat, but some species are. Growing conditions, just you need to know what you're working with. You don't want to put a super moisture intensive tree in a desert, right? Built conditions, we're going to go over all this. Species diversity is really important. You know, people look at, again, I'll bring up the I.A. They say, why did you plant all the same type of tree? You know, what if a disease comes? Certainly that is important. But what this 30-20-10 rule, the most important thing of that's more on an urban scale planting design. You know, you have things like Dutch elm disease is the best example of this, where northeastern states only planted American elm trees, and then Dutch elm came along and then completely eradicated their entire urban canopy. So if you follow the 30-20-10 rule, which is family, genus, and species, you never want to have more than 30%, 20%, 10%. You really get a not a surefire bet that you're going to have a healthy canopy if a disease comes along, but it gives you a really good opportunity to diversify. And if something comes along, you're kind of protected that way. It's not all just about shade. You know, take a holistic look at ecological benefits of each of the trees, or ecological harm, you know, as in invasive species, and then aesthetics. You know, that's why trees are fun. Flowers, fall color, form, etc. Okay, this is where it gets very dense, so just bear with me. We are going to provide this again. But again, these are some limiting factors that you have to take into account when you're planting a tree. You do not want this to become a nuisance to you, your neighbors, or the public. So utilities, look up, look down. Okay, call 811 if you're going to dig. Power lines are really our most limiting factor. Everyone thinks that they have power lines at their house, at least in the city where they're not buried. Only one side of the street generally has power lines. So it's really just important to look at that gable on your roof and where that cable is coming from. If it's coming from across the street, that generally means that you do not have power on your side. You have telecommunications. It's usually a coated black wire. And the differentiation between that is Georgia Power is trying to protect their power grid. So they're going to come and let's just say, not always properly prune your trees that are in the power lines. But if you're under telecommunication lines, you really don't have to worry about those trees growing into them, because there's not an entity that's going to come and prune for them generally. So like I said, black coated rubber, 30-foot transmission lines are generally what we have in residential areas. And it is good to go with understory species, redbuds. We'll go through all those species here in a little bit, but sometimes you can push the envelope with some species of trees that do take pruning well. If you do decide that you're going to go with kind of a smaller mid-story tree, hornbeam, trident, maple, perodia as examples, I would really encourage you to prune them yourself before someone who doesn't know what they're doing comes and prunes them. We do offer free pruning classes, and the first one starts in October. So check our website. We're going to be teaching pruning 101 through pruning 103, and just gives you some good tools of how to prune your own trees, and come help us prune. 60-foot transmission is our grid, basically is our power grid, and Georgia Power, rightfully so, is very protective over it. So there's really only a handful of trees that you can plant under that, and their recommended planting palette is primarily shrubs, you know, Tonto, Crepe Myrtle, and Camellia off the top of my head, which aren't really necessarily trees. So just when you're planting under the big 60-foot transmission lines, give us a call before you plant, because they really risk getting the old chop. Water meters, very important. Again, especially in droughts, trees want to find water, so you don't want them to bust your water meter. So at least 5 feet away from your water meter if you're planting in a right-of-way space. And really just knowing what type of trees, shallow rooters, water lovers, you want to avoid those. Gas, water, fiber are supposed to be by law buried at least 2 feet deep, but let's just say myself and my colleagues have hit them before. So it's always just good to call 811. You don't want to cause that headache to yourself. Headaches for others. Visibility, I think, is really the most important. You want to plant your trees, put them in the right of way, put them along the streetscape, but really you just want to make sure that you and your neighbors can get out safely. 20 feet from corners is a good rule of thumb. And bushy species really don't work well in right-of-way settings. That's your deciduous magnolias, some of the bushy species that we'll go over here later, but you want a tree that is generally a single stem tree that you can lift up in corridor spaces, so vehicular and pedestrian sightlines are good to go. And then proximity to structures. Don't put stuff right next to your house unless you know it's small. People put screen trees, things like that, next to houses, and they do fine. But medium to large trees, you really have to be careful so they don't buckle your foundation. All right, moving on. Now we get a little less stringent. Now sometimes for opportunities to take advantage of your trees. Shade, obviously. We always encourage people at Trees Atlanta, people say, what should I plant here? We have to first go through those limiting factors, but we always push people to go big or go home. I mean, if you don't have overhead power and you have 5 to 10 feet in a strip, or heck, an open lawn space, plant a native shade tree. Crepe myrtles, redbuds, they have their place, but that's more for when you have to plant them. Why not plant a tree that's going to outlive us and support hundreds of caterpillar species and things like that? While, crepe myrtle, great, it flowers, but it's going to support like 2 bees in the summer. Great. So anyway, all that's to say, anyway, I digress. I'll step off that soapbox. Passive solar is really, really something that you don't see people take too much advantage of. All that really means is planting deciduous trees on your east, west, and south sides of your structures or your homes. We all know that the sun starts in the east, travels along the southern sun, and then sets in the west. So your deciduous trees in the summer and the spring, when they're foliated, are going to block those throughout the day. But in the winter, when they defoliate, you want the opportunity to have the sun come in your windows and actually heat your house. So it's common sense, but it's something that people don't often think of when they're planting. And then for those of you who, in my case, actually, I'm on a hill, so I'm super exposed to northern wind. So having evergreens to block that and just for a screen is really nice. Natives, pollinators, birds, things like that. When in doubt, again, go large, go native if you can. Again, I keep going over this I.A. thing. You're sick of hearing about it, but I do love it. It's an experience. It seems very frou-frou and European, but I don't care. It's same matching bloom time, fall color, etc. I just think it's such a cool opportunity to walk through those things. For framing, trees can enhance architectural features. Some people like them to block their windows. Some people like them to frame their front door. However you want to do it, create rooms with them. An interesting point on that, creating rooms. Up on the East Side Trail, we have a circle of beech trees, and you guys can look up the folklore on it, of a circle of monoculture trees. But go check that out. It's over by the Carter Center. It's just a really cool little room that we've created with a single species of trees. Curvilinear designs. If you have a very kind of boxy house or boxy or rectangular property, get crazy, get curvilinear with your design. It's just an opportunity to make things look a little funkier. And then of course for screening, magnolias, red cedars, some of the shrubby evergreens that we'll go over here in a little bit. And then this hippy dippy dude, I don't know who it is. I just randomly found that, but I mean, trees are fun. He might've had a little too much fun with them, but each their own. Okay. when you're planting flowering species and just planning your garden in general, think about having a year-round interest. Why, kind of juxtaposed to my singular LA species where everything matches in a yard. You want to have year-round interest in your yard. So there are things that camellias and things like that flower in the winter, and then you have your obvious spring species, and some flower in the fall and summer. So just really mix it up. We have this new resurgence of urban farmers and people. One of the questions I always got the most are, what fruit trees should I plant? It's certainly not peach and apple like most people think. You have persimmon, pawpaw, serviceberry, and native plums like flatwood and Chickasaw that grow here without like any effort, and they just go crazy and give you so much fruit. It's really important to know the difference, though, again, doing your research between monoecious and dioecious. Monoecious means that the tree has both sexes on its singular tree, but dioecious means that one tree is going to be male and one tree is going to be female. So on some occasions, you need multiples of a tree, loquat being one of them. And then I don't know why I wrote "not the bees." That's a Nick Cage reference, but fruit trees aren't always good. They're great for your yard. They're great for parks as long as they're being tended to, but it might not be a great tree for a sidewalk. They invite pests, frankly, if they're not harvested in time, and bees and things like that. So just be careful what you're doing. And these are just other examples. There are crazy forms of trees. If, like, let's say you have ample space to plant soil volume wise, but you're 15 feet away from power lines, you can still go with a very tall tree, but make sure it's a fastigiate species. Like, there are certain cultivars of all pond cypresses are very upright, fastigiate. European hornbeam, a lot of ginkgos are upright. So it's a nice way to play with things, not having to go necessarily understory, but make sure you have that spread worked out. And then fall color. I don't hate red maples, everyone, but come on, let's get a little variety in our landscape. So get adventurous. Hickory trees, super yellow fall color. Shumard oak has a glistening version of a red maple. And black gums, I can't say enough about black gums. Some of you real Southerners out there know it as Tupelo. Shrub-like species. Shrub-like species, they certainly have their place in the world. You guys on this left side, you guys see that is a super wide verge. In Atlanta, where I am, these spaces are all but gone, where you have the 8-foot strip and the overhead power. But you need a lot of space for these. You can limb them up, you can limb them up, you can limb them up. If they want to be a shrub, they're going to be a shrub. One of the best examples of this is Grancy Graybeard. It's our American fringe tree. Bees, other pollinators. When I say bees, I mean all pollinators. Bees are certainly not the only important pollinator. You have anything from beetles to flies. So pollinators love this tree. It's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Basically looks like a big snowball in the spring. We do sell this plant. It's very popular, so get it while you can. A lot of people ask me what alternatives there are to dogwood. We all love dogwoods. But I won't say, because I can't definitively tell you they are going out of our hardiness zone, but they're tending to do a little bit better in North Georgia, North Carolina, and moving up the line to Tennessee. You can still do them. It is one of the trees that I'm going to highlight, but this is a great alternative. Not only does it basically match the flower power, didn't mean to say that, but also creates a really beautiful little blueberry-like fruit that we can eat, that birds can eat. And in the middle, you can see it almost outperforms the fall color of a dogwood. So really just a great, great tree. Also a little bit sensitive, but a little bit tougher than a dogwood. Your Asian deciduous magnolias, the ones that we use the most around here is from the Little Girl series. So you have Jane and Anne and Ruth and all these others, which are basically offshoots of your purple variety, Solangianas. But they have bred so many of these. They're just about all of them are like the first things to pop in your garden in the spring. So you still have those kind of gloomy, depressing mid 30s, 40s days in early spring, late winter, and these guys are popping, kind of giving you some hope. I'm not sure if we're selling this. I should have asked Michelle prior to this, but this is just an awesome tree. My wife and I actually planted this for our wedding. Not that you care, but I just think it is such a cool species. Smoke tree is just a really pops in your landscape. There is also a native variety of this tree, not quite as floriferous, but if you see this guy, it looks like floating cotton candy in a landscape, and it's just really an awesome variety, but super shrub-like. And all my coworkers make fun of me, but that's okay. I love Japanese maples, probably our most diverse species of tree, just because it's been bred for thousands of years. And it's just so cool to me how many of them there are and how vastly different each one is from another. I won't go through all of these. This is why we're going to be providing that PDF, but these are all very notable shrub-like species that we like. Windmill palm. I don't love palms in Georgia, but this is a native-ish variety. Kind of look out of place to me, but if you have a pool, sure, put it by it. Bottlebrush buckeye, again, that flatwoods plum is awesome. Witch hazel is a great shrub that can get quite large. Beautiful yellow flowers. Native azaleas. This is kind of, these next two are what I really want to harp on. Native azaleas. Everyone knows azaleas from the Masters and Grandma's Garden and things like that. Generally, those are Asian varieties, and yes, they're gorgeous. They have their place, but native azaleas are making a resurgence, and I think are much prettier, and they actually offer the benefits that a native with your birds and your pollinators and things like that. And oak leaf hydrangea, my favorite shrub, best bang for your buck of any tree. This is all my opinion again, but I just love oak leaf hydrangea and how many varieties that there are. I love ruby slippers, which I know that we're selling. And then sumac and beautyberry are the other ones I want to highlight. They're great for birds if you're trying to create a bird habitat and just some beauty in your garden. These are really unique looking shrub-like species. Okay, so now on to understory. These are generally about 25 feet in height, so they can be placed under those 30 feet utility lines. And I'm just going to check my time. I tend to ramble. We all probably know Redbud, but you probably don't know how many amazing varieties there are of them. Merlot is one of my favorites. It took over forest pansy for our year-round purple cultivar. Rising Sun, you guys know that one, likely from North Highland Avenue, and it's getting used actually a lot. Fair warning, it takes a lot of pruning. It's basically the happiest tree I've ever seen. So if you don't prune it often, it'll tend to crack and things like that. It's got very thin bark, but man, is it beautiful when its emergent leaves pop. Tennessee Pink is just a egregiously pink variety as it flowers. And there's another one that I didn't include on here called Flamethrower. It's by the same people that introduced Rising Sun. Look up Flamethrower. It is a truly awesome looking tree. I told you how to highlight dogwood. Dogwood certainly has its place in traditional Southern gardens and things like that, but just know what you're doing. I really encourage you guys to buy small. You're just going to have to be patient with this tree. If you plant over a 7-gallon dogwood, I would be willing to bet a small fortune that it is not going to make it over the first 2 years of establishment. So planting small is just always the better decision, especially when you have kind of a quote unquote garden variety sensitive tree. Sourwood fits into there. But you know, you have your native dogwood. Just make sure, and it's all about research. They are very prone to something called anthracnose. So you have anthracnose resistant species like your Appalachian varieties, some of your Rutgers series, or you can go with Cornuscusa, our non-native species. While it's not native, it sure is gorgeous, and it actually has an edible fruit that's really interesting. So two-wing silverbell, this really in our neighborwoods planting palette, this really overtook dogwood for us because it actually can be planted in an urban environment. It's really just as pretty. Unfortunately, those beautiful pendulous flowers, they only last like a week or so, but it really does burn brightly when indeed it does burn. So native, very interesting looking, smooth, beautiful bark, really good alternative to dogwood. And then I like to offer alternatives to non-natives. Everyone loves cherry trees. We have festivals for them all around the world. But crabapple is really just as pretty, if not prettier. And again, it has the added benefits of being directly linked to our native pollinators and our birds. They've grown up with these for thousands of years, while we just introduced the cherries from China and Korea, a handful, 200 years ago. I don't dislike cherries by any means. I just think this is another opportunity to go native, and it's just as pretty and usually lives longer, and it produces fruit. All right, elephant in the room here, crepe myrtle. Crepe myrtle is extremely overused. We all know that. Go down to Columbus, Georgia, and it's basically a monoculture of crepe myrtle. But when you have a 2-foot strip in full sun and overhead power, and you just throw up your hands and say, nothing's going to live here, that's where you're wrong. Crepe myrtle will live there. I alluded earlier to why plant a crepe myrtle when you can plant an oak. That certainly bodes. I mean, that holds true. Okay, go native when you can, but when in those really, really tough urban conditions where you feel like nothing else is going to live and you're just not going to plant a tree, don't go that route. Plant a crepe myrtle and it'll be okay. All right, just don't top them. Don't have your landscapers top them. It's not only ugly, but it's gonna, the first time you top it, you're always gonna have to top it, and then it shoots out its suckers, and then it becomes a public safety issue because cars can't see around it, pedestrians can't see around it. So just let it grow tall. It's a beautiful, beautiful muscular stature tree. Some other notables: sassafras. Yeah, it's an awesome tree. It's where root beer comes from its roots, and its leaves you can actually make tea out of. Really beautiful. Yopon holly. It's a little unique for some. It has a very interesting form, but it's also great for a screen, great for wildlife. Loqua is a non-native fruit tree. You need multiples. It is dioecious, but it's actually evergreen and just a super cool looking tree. Takes heavy pruning, and an interesting kumquat-esque fleshy fruit as well. Pawpaw, speaking of fruit, it's our largest native fruit. Really large, interesting leaves and interesting fall color. I believe it is pollinated by flies. It's got stinky flowers, I think, that smell like rotten meat, is how it is pollinated. And then sourwood. Sourwood belongs in the same bucket as dogwood. Plant it small, but go for it. If you need an interesting, traditional southern plant with just insane fall color and beautiful flowers, sourwood's great, but I wouldn't plant it over 7 gallons, and it's got to be in partial shade. Okay, now on to the mid-stories. This is where we're kind of pushing into, instead of having them 15 feet on center from each other, you can get them closer to 25 to 30 feet apart from each other because their spreads are a little bit wider. Most of the mid-stories that I'm highlighting here are non-natives, and the reason for that is I'm just assuming that most of the people that are on this this call live in Atlanta or at least in the metro area. So these are all trees that do really, really well in urban environments. So trident maple, I.S.A. bergerianum. By teenage phase, I said if you can get through its awkward teenage phase, what I mean by that is it has certain shoots that go way outside of the canopy line, but then eventually either you can prune them or you can let the rest of the tree catch up to it, and then it just becomes a nice rounded form tree. Doesn't have the best fall color, but it's just about as tough as a crepe myrtle. Really beautiful flaky bark as well when it gets older. This is our non-native French tree. I alluded to the Graybeard French tree, which is Cayanthus virginiana, well, something like that. This is Cayanthus retusus. Requires a lot of pruning. These flowers, it's so floriferous that it can actually get super duper heavy and hang over, but it's got really nice lustrous leaves and turns into a giant snowball. A lot of people confuse this for your snowball viburnum. The one issue that I know about this tree is that much like your early flowering Asian deciduous magnolias, this flowers early, and if you have a late frost, sometimes it can just wipe it out. But I mean, it always comes back, but it won't flower twice in a year. Chinese pistache. I think this is a criminally underrated tree and underused. It's awesome in urban environments, small spaces. Obviously, to the right, you can see how great a fall color it has, and it's just a really nicely formed tree. Some pruning is required early on in life, but you know that is planting in an urban environment. These trees oftentimes go crazy, them being in full sun and really not knowing how to react to it. So a little bit of pruning, but I think it's worth it. It's a really great tree. Hop hornbeam, called hop hornbeam because that looks like the hops that are used in our favorite beverage, not this one, my second favorite beverage. We have a little phrase over here. So you have your hornbeam, which is Carpinus, and then you have your hop hornbeam, which is your Australia. They really grow in the same general area. They're both natives, but Australia likes it drier. Remember that one. So you can actually plant this, and it tends to do fairly well, even though it's slow. It does fairly well in small strips and very urban environments that are tending to not hold moisture, let's say. Sweet Bay Magnolia, this is my absolute favorite evergreen tree of all time. I have 3 on my dinky little property in Grant Park. I just think it's, you know, everyone knows magnolias with southern magnolias, but this is the better magnolia. It's tighter, just as good for birds. It has your little grenades with the red berries, creamy white flowers that smell beautiful. Maybe not quite as dense in terms of a screen tree as a southern magnolia, but it's beautiful and lustrous, and I can't say enough about it. Great tree. Also comes in a single stem version, not only multi-trunk. Other notables: hornbeam, already gone over that. Perodia, which is called Persian ironwood because it comes from that general area, desert, Saudi Arabia kind of stuff. So obviously it does well in harsh areas. Big leaf magnolia, man, also criminally underrated. You need it in good soil, good drainage, like you need in a lot of garden varieties. Don't have it in too exposed of an area to win because it has leaves that are bigger than my head and they tend to rip if it's in a. So just put it in kind of a forested setting. It's an awesome tree, also good for our pollinators. Tupelo tree. This particular Agichi Tupelo does well in small spaces, and you can actually plant it under power lines. Cherry tree, I've already given my spiel on cherries. Great tree, but just doesn't live that long and kind of disease prone. Weeping willow, just keep it away from your water pipes. River birch is super tough, guys. There's a version called Duraheat that really withstands urban environments well, and can not only withstand drought, but can also withstand a good deal of flooding. And then Georgia oak. I think that we're going to have some of this for sale. This is probably the hardest to find oak in Georgia. It's only native to granite outcroppings of Georgia and Alabama. So it's super, super rare, and it has a super rare, endemic range. But it's just a really unique shrub-like, I don't know, you could be the only one in your neighborhood to have this particular tree. It's just a really interesting story. Speaking of story, boom, gotcha. Overstory trees. These are 60 plus feet in height. Generally, you want to space them 40 to 45 feet on center. And I get the question a lot, or especially when I was in neighborhoods, or people ask me through questionnaires about the Beltline. Why are you planting all of these overstory trees so close together? Well, there's really two answers to that. They're going to be fine. So if you really want to push them close together, 25 feet, whatever, that's how they grow in a forest setting. They actually kind of like to be close to each other. And if their canopies converge, that's more natural than them being far apart from each other, right? And we also just kind of want some immediacy of shade in the urban environment. So if while I could put an oak tree 60 feet apart from each other in a palatial estate or a park, maybe going down a driveway or along the Beltline, we can push it to 35 or 40. So it just closes that shade gap even faster. White oak is the king/queen of our eastern deciduous forest, in the Piedmont specifically. Oaks are just awesome. We have 33 native oaks in Georgia, second only to, I believe, Texas. I think they have the most native oaks, but we have a lot. It's just the best species that you can plant. So if you're scratching your head, I want to provide shade, I want to sequester carbon, I want to feed the birds, I want to feed the pollinators, go with oak. Tulip poplar, beautiful tree, obviously named for its tulip-like flowers. The one thing that I have to say about this tree is this is a tree that you will never have to prune. It grows straight up, it self-prunes, just a very low maintenance tree, except you have to rake a lot of leaves, but who cares? Okay, beech tree. This is just about our last species in that comes up in our natural succession in the Piedmont. I mentioned earlier that you shouldn't put it in full sun because that's not where it belongs. It's the last species to come about. In a full sun setting, it starts to get this. You guys can see on the far left, what does that have? 15 competing trunks. In a forested setting, it will truly have a dominant leader and then branch out from there. Super long-lived tree, gorgeous. And something really interesting about the species is it's something called marcescent, meaning that and some of the oaks that I just showed as well, white oak specifically, are also marcescent. What marcescent species do is they actually hold their browned leaves on their canopy. So essentially those leaves aren't pushed off until new foliage emerges. So it really acts like an evergreen species. It's just not green. So if you go in the forest super late in the winter, you'll see these beautiful shimmering gold, whatever screens. And that's usually means you're in an old forest and that there's beeches there. Black gum. I love this tree so much. Amazing fall color. Tupelo honey. Bees swarm it like crazy. The birds love. It's just an awesome species. If you're gonna plant the straight species of this or some of the cultivars, I highly recommend that you take our pruning classes though. This tree, especially in a full sun setting, tends to go a little bit wild and does not want to have a single apical leader. So you'll have multiple trunks, and then you'll end up with a tupelo bush. So it does require, basically next to American elm, it requires the most pruning out of any of the species that we actually plant. Sweet gum gets a bad name. It's great for a park setting. It's bad for your driveway. Okay, you don't want a bunch of sweet gum fruits all over the place. But they do, one of the cultivars that they're producing called Rotunda Loba is actually a seedless sweet gum. You get all the benefits of the sweet gum, beautiful fall color, shade, quick growth, but you don't have to deal with all the pesky fruit, but then doesn't feed the birds after that. Oh, wow, this is a lot. Bald cypress, my favorite. I've already talked to you about that. Sycamore, you need to know where you're planting this. Not the greatest root system to plant near a structure of your home, but really interesting platy looking bark, good for all wildlife. Dawn redwood, another deciduous conifer that'll get to be about 120 feet. If you guys want to see a really good example of this, there's two of them actually. One is at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, and you can actually see their dawn redwood as you're, what would that be? It's over by the baseball fields, actually. You can see them from the baseball fields, the active oval at Piedmont Park. And then at the bank in downtown Decatur, there's probably, I know there's lots of banks, sorry. I think it's Wells Fargo in downtown Decatur, and theirs has to be 100 feet. It's just an awesome tree. Ginkgo, we all know about the ginkgo. Eastern red cedar, this is an underutilized screen tree, in my opinion. The only warning is if you have fruiting trees, make sure that they get along with each other, because you have cedar rust that will basically eliminate any service berries or apples, and they just don't play well with one another. American holly, very underrated. People think of hollies as the super spiky Burfords and an Asian species. American holly is a beautiful muscular tree, great for wildlife, and just really underutilized in my opinion. American linden, good looking tree, good fall color. Not the hardiest of our overstory species, I'll say. Hickories, go for it, awesome. Sugar and red maples, they have their place. And when it comes to sugar maple, I would not necessarily go with Acer saccharum, which is what we've traditionally planted. Acer barbatum is a more southern endemic genotype that we're starting to breed up here as climate change continues. Our southern maples and other species are going to get unfortunately wiped out. And then American elm, super fast growing, but just beware, it takes a lot of heavy hands early on. What are we at? 1255. Tree sale is awesome. You're not going to find these trees in a lot of places, and all of these lovely people, maybe not Michelle's son there in the basket. There's a ton of arborists and just passionate people there to help you choose the right tree for the right place. So again, all of the proceeds to the tree sale go to this lovely organization that I work for, our education department, our tree planting initiatives, our forest saving initiatives, things like that. So it's a great time. We have two of them. One is going online right now. So hop on your phones and look through it. And then we're going to have an in-person second chance sale Saturday, October 2nd. Okay. These are my citations. I didn't make all this stuff up. And I actually finished on time. It's a miracle. And so I think Jabari's going to take it over for maybe some questions that we had. And if there are no questions, I appreciate y'all's attention. I hope you guys learned something or maybe two things. I hope I can unshare. There we go.
Awesome presentation. Thank you, Alex. Okay, so we have one question in the chat. This may not be one that you need to answer. I might actually have an answer for it. It says, I need help picking a tree, but can't go to the sale in person. What should I do?
Jabari, hit him with it.
So if you're not going to be able to go to the tree sale in person, you can definitely still check out the entire catalog using that like link. I can also repost it, but you should be able to see it. And you can just see everything that's here. Some of the trees are actually out of stock, right? So show that like they are being bought, like people are buying trees. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of options for you there. It says, I did, but I am young and unsure about what's hardy enough for the yard I am planting in. Okay, so I don't know, Alex, maybe you can give a little bit more insight on that.
Yeah, I think if you don't want to go out and spend $100 on your Dr. Michael Durr book, go to Missouri Botanical Gardens website, and if there's something that catches your eye on the tree sale, something will catch your eye, I promise you. Go ahead and use that as a resource. It's really, really, it's a good knowledge base, and it can kind of tell you the culture of that particular tree and whether or not it's going to do well in poorly drained soil or near reflective heat and things like that. And if ultimately, if that doesn't give you the answer that you need, just reach out to someone on our staff, and we're happy to help you. Like, we have those resources for you while you're in person, but I think that there's just a contact that you can head up, or just email alex@treesatlanta.org. I don't know, just tell me some of your site conditions, and I should be able to help you out. If you have, if you're trying to decide between 3 to 5 species.
Awesome. We have another question from Kathleen Scholes. Excuse me if I pronounced that a little incorrectly. We are having trouble eliminating Bradford pear root suckers after cutting down trees 2 years ago. We'd love to plant native, but don't want to accidentally kill them trying to get rid of these roots.
Yeah, Bradford pears, no bueno. There are two things that you can do is when you cut down those suckers, we really never want to use pesticides and things like that, but sometimes you have to. So there's a cut and spray method wherein you can cut those suckers, you can drill holes into the actual trunk, and then just spray those particular locations with glyphosate or another, foliate killer. And that way, once it's cut and it's sprayed in that area, it actually sucks down into the vascular system. So yeah, unfortunately, invasive trees, they just have a special advantage over our natives, and they will sucker from the bottom. Another alternative, a little more expensive alternative, would be to get that stump ground. So there's professional stump grinding companies. They'll probably charge you about $200 a pop. And I would not actually plant directly on top of that for a year or two, but it at least kind of gets it off of your plate, knowing that those suckers aren't going to come back, hopefully. So you can plant, you should be able to plant near it. It's just you never want to broadcast spray, essentially, and that's what I think you're worried about, is the soil being contaminated. If you're really careful on that cut and spray, you should just be able to target just to that particular tree. I hope that helped. It was a roundabout answer.
Oh yeah. All right, so we have another question from Betsy Redmond. I have a 20-year-old maple tree in my front yard in Cabbagetown, 14 feet from my house and from the street. In front of power lines, sidewalk, roots are coming up. I think I should cut it down and plant a better tree. Is that the wrong decision? Feels bad taking it down.
Yeah, it does feel bad taking it down. I think that, if you can stand looking at it, I think you just really, I don't know if I can answer that question. If it's not, buttressing your foundation or something, if it's not, causing your power to flicker or your neighbor's power to flicker or something like that, I would maybe take it upon yourself to try and prune it. You can always kind of exfoliate or try and prune your main leaves, easy for me to say, your main structural branches kind of parallel to the sidewalk and parallel to your structure and parallel to your utilities. So, you know, you can always try to at least salvage it, but you know, we run into these things all the time. It kind of is what it is. Try not to cut it down, but if you have to, you have to. And I think shoot me an email. I can maybe send one of my colleagues out and we can look at it and see if there's anything remedial that could be done for it.
Cool. We got 2 more questions. One from Mike. I do not want to mispronounce your last name, but the question is Dutch elm disease a concern?
Not really anymore. You know, the varieties, the cultivars that we plant have been specifically bred to be resistant to Dutch elm disease. So you have your Princeton elm, you have your Valley Forge elm, you have your gosh, what is the other elm? Jefferson elm. Those are all blight resistant to that. So it's really not a concern anymore. What's the bigger concern is people planting Chinese elm, because it's a super durable urban tree, but it is just as bad, if not worse, than Bradford pear. So all of you who are still listening to me, if you're not asleep, don't plant Chinese elm. It's Ulmus parviflora is not good. Ulmus americana and all those others are fine to be planted.
All right, don't plant Chinese elm. That's good
No
to
Chinese
know.
elm.
We got another question from Pamela. Love Japanese maples too, but I've noticed the one we planted 17 years ago does produce seedlings kind of far afield, helicoptering away. Any word on whether they are a danger to become invasive?
I have never heard of Japanese maples escaping and at least doing damage to a forest setting. Those little helicopter things are called samaras. They're obviously doing their job, kind of floating away into the abyss. But I wouldn't worry about them. What I would do is I'd dig them up and put them in the right place, or give them away on next door after they grow a little bit. So everyone would love to have one, but I wouldn't worry about it. I've never in my life have I been wandering around in a southeastern forest and said, "Ooh, there's a Japanese maple." Never seen it, never.
And then I think the final question, unless we get one more in right after, which is a big one. Do you have a consulting service sending someone to look at the site and advise? This is from Alice.
That depends. I mean, if you're going to get a tree planted, yes, we do. Another plug, and it's not even a money making plug. If you live in the city of Atlanta or Sandy Springs, I believe Brookhaven, you do have the opportunity to get free front yard trees. There's not a huge variety of them, like the variety that you'd find, say, at the tree sale, but that's really where we're going to offer our consulting skills. Like if you're talking about, I'm going to purchase a tree, can you come and look at it prior to it? That's not really something we do, but hopefully this PowerPoint and some of the resources on treesatlanta.org will get you through that selection process. But again, just, you know, we have a staff that is a bunch of nerds and love to talk about trees. So if you can take good enough pictures and things like that, and you know, like, hey, I'm thinking about buying this, we can help out. But I do encourage you down the line to take advantage of our free front yard tree program.
All right. So that was our last question. Aaron shouted us out. Looks like they had a river birch planted in their front yard. In their front yard last year. It's growing well and they love it. So they're thankful for the program. So obviously, you know, these are really good things.
Yeah.
So do you have anything else to add?
No, I appreciate everyone's attention, and Yeah, alex@treesatlanta.org if you have any follow-up questions, and shop the tree sale.
Oh yeah,
That's
shop
it.
for tree show.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys again for participating in this event today. All the links should still be in here for as long as I'm going to hang around until everybody leaves. So all the links
I'll
should
do
be
the
available
same.
for you guys.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll do the same.
Thank
Hi,
you
Mom.
again.
I
You guys
love
have a
you.
good day.
My mom's here. Love you, Mom.
Oh, look at that. You already got some emails.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right. I'm out like shout. I don't think anyone's going to ask anything.
Yeah. All right.
Deuces, everyone.
Cool. Add 3 more in there. Bye. All right. So for the remaining 2 in there, I am about to shut down the webinar. So if you are still there, if you get bounced out, that's just me ending it. Thank you again and have a good rest of your day.